Okay, Larry, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready now.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today, May 5th, time is 7:08 p.m. We're calling to order the meeting of the Public Works Committee of the Common Council. I'm going to start off with roll call. I'll say everybody's name and please respond with an aye or here so we know you're here. Barbara Smith.
Here.
Tom Keegan.
Here.
George Theodorides.
Here.
Manny Langella. Tom Livingston.
Here.
Darlene Young.
Here.
And myself, George Serenides. Here. All right, we have a quorum. First off today, we're starting off with the public hearing. Public hearing to hear all parties interested for the honorary naming of the portion of Chestnut Street from Monroe Street to Merritt Place to Officer Cesar Ramirez Drive. Do we have anybody signed on that would like to speak, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, can you please state your name for the record and your address?
My name is Monique. I am the secretary for the Public Works Committee. Diane Loricella sent an email and would like to make a comment about the public hearing. She says, I wholeheartedly support naming a portion of Chestnut Street after Cesar Ramirez, and because he has passed on after a gallant fight against a brain tumor, the council should unanimously vote to honor him and his family. And that's her comment for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Monique, and thank you, Diane. Anyone else?
And we do have a Jarrett Leota. Jarrett, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Or unmute yourself at this moment. No, there's no one else. So I think we're closed to public speaking.
All right, I see Jarrett's name. I don't hear him. Should we give him another second or so, see if he could get his mic working, or?
I can unmute him.
Okay, let's try that, see if it works.
I'm press. I'm just signed in as press, but thank you for that.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah.
All right, seeing that no one else has signed up to speak, we'll just move on. So we'll end public hearing and move on to public participation. Do we have anybody interested in speaking?
Yes, Chairman, Diane Loricella also has a public comment for public participation. And I would read those. They go like this. Discussion A4, Norwalk River Valley Trail. I have been a longtime proponent of this trail, even in the days when I was founding president of the Norwalk River Watershed Association. I understand that some kind of environmental review was done behind the Casatelli ? Marble facility on Riverside Avenue. My question, was there a professional phase 1 and or a phase 2 environmental site assessment, ESA, done on this property? Historic records should show that the land was given to an auto dealer repair shop by the Connecticut DOT in the 1970s or 1980s, which could lead to possible contamination from old gasoline tanks, paint, solvents, and cleaners. If so, who conducted the phase 1 and or phase 2 ESA? May I review the report, as I have over 25 years of professional experience conducting this type of assessment. I did not see any copy of the report in the backup document. If an official phase 1 and or 2 ESA has not been done, it should be, even if the state would pay for its cleanup. It is well documented that when contamination is discovered after construction begins, it could delay expensive contractors as a cleanup is conducted. A properly conducted phase 1 ESA could help clear up any mystery, and even a partial phase 2 ESA test to see the extent of contamination. And one last thing. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Monique. Just for Diana, for the record, when we have public participation, it's supposed to be on something that's on the agenda currently. We do not have the Norwalk River Valley Trail on the agenda tonight, but as a courtesy, Diane can feel free to reach out to me in an email and we'll follow up with the Public Works Committee to look into those questions. Is there anything else for public participation?
Chairman, I do see Diane Laricella has logged in.
Okay,
Diane, if
Like
you'd
to
like
speak.
to speak, please raise your hand electronically. Okay.
Hi, good evening. I actually was trying to listen by phone and the same issue happened last month where the computer voice is asking for a password. And so I hooked in right now just to see if I could get on. Is there a password ID number that I could put in because I'm in the middle of doing a project and I'd really rather, although you all have lovely faces and I'm good to see you, healthy, I hope, I need to listen by phone. Can someone please give me the password?
Yes, Diane, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, 765 GG5, lowercase g's.
Thank you. If someone could correct this, because I would imagine the public who's trying to listen in cannot do so, and they may not understand how to get on this particular call. So for next month, maybe there's some glitch that's happening. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, George. I will
You're
try
welcome, Diane.
the
Have a
password.
good night. Have a good night and be safe. Thank you. Okay, so is that all we have for public participation tonight, Larry?
Yes.
All right, then seeing no other participants, we're just gonna go ahead and move to new business. Item 1 on new business, approve the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of Tuesday, April 13, 2020. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor? I think, do we have to signify by saying yes, or should I say everybody's name and have them respond, Larry?
George, I advise that we do a roll call and, for people who are listening.
Okay, so I'll start off with you, Barbara.
Yes.
Tom? Keegan? Sorry.
I'm here. Yes.
George Theodorides?
Yes.
Manny is still absent from the meeting, correct? Yes. Tom Livingston
Yes.
and Darlene Young.
Yes.
And I'm also a yes, so it's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 2, approve the request for the honorary naming of the portion of Chestnut Street from Monroe Street to Merritt Place to Officer Cesar Ramirez Drive. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move it for a vote. Again, Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Great, unanimous. That moves forward. That's a good move for us. I would like to move items number 3 and 4 together because they pertain to the same topic. Is everybody okay with that if I do that? Okay.
Yes.
So items 3 and 4, I'll read them. I'll read them now. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a temporary right of access and entry agreement with Sono TOD LLC to enter over a certain portion of 30 Monroe Street for construction access purposes. Item number 4, 8-24 referral BPW temporary right of entry and access agreement over 30 Monroe Street. Report and recommendation action. Would someone like to move the item? Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right, I will open it up for discussion. Are there any comments? Would anybody? Okay, Mr. Keegan.
Yeah, thanks, George. I discussed this with Jess yesterday. My question for the public record is, will the city receive any compensation for this?
Who would like to answer that? Ms. Casey?
Yes, I can answer. So we are not receiving compensation for the temporary right of entry or access. What we are receiving as part of the overall project and the zoning commission approvals is approximately $300,000 in streetscape improvements, which includes lighting, sidewalks, street trees, bike racks, some along Chestnut, some along Monroe, but also sidewalks and lighting and trees up along Railroad Place. The sidewalk along Monroe will actually be doubled in width. So that accommodates that as well. The $300,000 in streetscape improvements do not include the landscaping. So we received that from the site contractor, from the developer. In addition to that, we expect and anticipate approximately $250,000 in building permit fees to be paid to the city for the construction of the building itself. The foundation permit was $32,000. And we also anticipate your payment for a permanent easement, which will come in the next 60 to 120 days as a secondary part of this discussion that they'll require to be able to construct some of the work on the project. So although there's no compensation for this particular right of entry, I did want to give you an overview of the compensation or the benefits that the community will receive overall. I think that from a standpoint of compensation, we looked at the minimal amount of time that the right of entry and access is in place, which is a 6-month period of time. At any point in time during the 6 months, that can be the right of entry can be closed either by the city with notice or the actual developer with notice. So it's 60 days. It's the 6 months maximum, but we're not sure that it will take the 6 months in total. So given the temporary nature of the request and given the temporary nature of what is being requested, we did not see compensation for that.
Mr. Livingston.
Yes, thank you. Couple things. Jess, I assume that doesn't include tax revenues we'll get from the project when completed either.
That's correct.
Yeah, so maybe you can give a brief overview of the project. I'm looking, you know, I see what I see what you've written, 106 units, 5 or 6 stories. So is it taking up the whole block between Chestnut and over to that area? I'm looking at the map.
Yeah, so I can actually, let's see. So the project is between 5 and 6 stories. It's 106 units, a mix between studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. It will start at it will go from the corner of Monroe and Chestnut all the way to Railroad Place, which is the public access way to get into the train station. It then extends down Chestnut to very close to where the parking is for 11 Chestnut, which is where that historical building is. So the building footprint will actually be that full block. You can see the building footprint in the site plan that was provided as part of the memo that was given. There will be ground floor retail, approximately 5,600 or 5,800 square feet. And the first level is parking, second level is parking, and then the apartments are of that.
And I mean, obviously, I don't know if you can answer this, but given where we are today, what was the building timeline, construction timeline?
So they had thought that they would do the foundation work over the next 60 to 90 days, and then they would come in after. That would give us the time to be able to work with them on the permanent easement piece, at which point in time we would take the permanent easement through the city process for decision, and they would be able to pull a building permit in approximately 90 to 120 days.
So what is the permanent, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but what is the permanent easement for? I'd hate to see them go a long way and we don't like the permanent easement.
So the permanent easement is to access the second level of parking that they have as the building, as zoning approved the building. So the first floor, the first level of parking is accessed off of Chestnut. And the second level of parking would be accessed up the public access way, which is Railroad Place. They would drive up Railroad Place and then they would turn left into the second level of parking in the side of the building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I do have a rendering of the building, if that would be helpful for you.
Yes, it would.
And I can, let's see. Let me just open that. Larry, can you let me share my screen, please?
Yes, all panelists should be able to share their screen.
Can everyone see that rendering?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is 11 Chestnut here. And the parking area here. This is 1 Chestnut. This is the consolidated site. So they came in and they over the last 3 to 5 years, they consolidated a number of sites. This is Railroad Place coming in and out. So part of the construction that they would take on is to actually straighten Railroad Place. They would then construct sidewalks along Chestnut, along Monroe, and then all the way up Railroad Place into this entrance and exit. And right now, if you recall, all of this is guardrail with trees that are overgrown. So they would construct this. The permanent easement that they're looking for would allow them to access their second level of parking, which they would require off of Railroad Place, which is where my cursor is indicating.
Now, Jessica, just to clarify the items at hand that we're voting on right now, they don't apply to the permanent easement, correct? This is just for the temporary access.
So this is just for temporary access for right of entry for them to be able to lay their foundation in a safe and secure way. So there's no construction access and there's no construction related to this particular ramp as part of the approval that we're asking for this evening. It only relates to right of entry to be able to basically come up against city property in order to lay the foundation properly for the building.
Will it affect pedestrian traffic?
No, we don't, no.
What does the entrance look like on Chestnut Street? So will cars be exiting? Can they exit onto Chestnut as well or enter?
Yeah, so there's 2 levels of parking, and the first level of parking, if you were to see Chestnut in behind and you were to see this little car here, the first level of parking, they would access off of Chestnut in through here. So there's a first level that's accessed off of Chestnut and the second level is accessed off of Railroad Place.
This is Barbara. I have a follow-up question to Tom's in terms of, pedestrian traffic. What about, as, assuming train traffic gets back up to normal at some point, what about as cars are leaving after a train has dropped passengers? And, you have traffic maybe coming up Railroad and trying to turn left into that that parking garage. Do you, I mean, has that been talked about? Do you foresee any issues, traffic issues there?
So we don't foresee any traffic issues. They did complete a traffic study, and the traffic study was submitted and reviewed without any concern. I do know that part of what they'll be doing for transportation and traffic improvements is actually straightening the road, straightening the public access way, which is Railroad Place, so that the sight line is better. And they'll also be widening the road at the end where they'll be widening the exit and entryway where it meets up with Monroe to be able to allow traffic to flow in and out more efficiently and effectively. There are 2 entrances and exits to the Sono train station. One of them is off of Monroe, but the other one is off of Henry. So we do know that cars will be able to go in each direction. I think the thought here is that we know that parking is required and that people will obviously have cars and be driving in and out of the building, but with the proximity to the train station, our hope is that there will be a lot of residents that are coming home from other places to live in Norwalk or leaving in the morning from Norwalk to go to work, and that hopefully that will alleviate some traffic.
And is this parking primarily for the residents, the tenants that'll be in this building, or is this?
It is parking for the building itself. Yeah. Yeah.
Jessica, is it going to add any sort of pedestrian parking for the stores or?
No, not this particular project. There is consideration for an additional phase, which has not yet been submitted, but we have been talking to the developer about that. And in that case, there may be additional parking for commuters, but in this particular phase, which we're calling phase 1, for 1 Chestnut for the 106 units, there is no additional parking.
And well, now I know we're getting a little ahead of the item, but when we do get to that point with the permanent easement, we'll have obviously a chance to weigh in then and make any sort of requests we might feel necessary, correct?
That's correct.
So this again is just for the temporary part, but we will have another chance before this becomes permanent.
Jessica, I have a question about the project itself. Is it on schedule or behind schedule? Because, you know, the building's been torn down and it's just an empty lot with a little pit in it. And actually, and do you know if that soil has any contamination in it? Because a few days ago, I saw 2 kids kind of like playing in that, in that little area.
I don't know.
Although it's fenced off, kids can still access it.
Yeah. So we've been talking to the developer about getting on site sooner rather than later. And we were trying to aim for mid-April, but with all of the COVID pandemic, things got pushed.
Right.
So the developer is extremely eager to get on site and get moving on this project. And we know that they're ready to pull the foundation permit, which will allow them access to the site, and the right of entry that you have in front of you tonight is to help advance that foundation to completion. But what they're hoping to do is be able to access the site as soon as possible, shovels in the ground as soon as possible, work on that foundation. And then while they work on the foundation, we can work on as I said, that permanent easement and work with them to be able to have them be in a position to request a building permit from the building department. So my understanding, Darlene, is that they want to get in the ground as soon as possible and that they have been delayed a couple weeks, probably due to everything that's been going on.
Okay.
From the second question, I don't know the specifics of any environmental contamination. I'm assuming that there is no environmental contamination because their plan is to put the shovels in the ground as soon as possible. But I can ask that question and follow up with the committee.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to announce, and for the record, Monique, Manny Langella just joined the meeting. So Manny's on the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, we're just voting on the easement
No, the temporary access, that's it.
access.
It's not an easement. The easement is still to come. And
Okay,
this is just, we're giving them the temporary right of access and entry.
Yeah,
okay,
so you're voting on the temporary right of entry and access, which is a 6-month period of time, which can be canceled at any time in writing from the city or the developer. And in that contract, there is indemnification, there's a restoration clause. In addition, there's insurance that will be provided, and all of the other clauses in which we do for right of entry. So I think it's important to note that it's a 6-month period of time, but that if the foundation is done before that, then we actually, that's the maximum amount of time that we've allowed for this right of entry.
What happens if they go over that 6-month
Right.
period?
They would need to make a request for us to be able to extend it, and then we would go through this process again.
Is there any other questions? I'm sorry, I don't have everybody on my screen right now, so
Oh, here, I can stop sharing. There you go.
thank you. I don't see anybody raising their hand. I don't hear anybody chiming in. All right, seeing no further questions, I'll put this to a vote. Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Langella,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston.
Yes, just to clarify, this is both items, right? 3 and 4?
Correct.
Yes.
And Ms. Young.
yes.
And I'm also a yes. All right, great. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, that's the end of new business. And now we're going into discussion. First topic, item A. Discussion, item 1, sediment removal contract. All right, who wants to do the honors? All right, Anthony, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just an anticipation and a brief update. This is the item for the that we've commonly referred to as the dredging projects in the 5 locations. We've made very good progress with the state DEP. We have 4 of the 5 applications approved, formally approved by the state, with the exception of June Avenue. So just to refresh everybody's memory, the dredging locations will be Friendly Pond area, Lloyd, Hunters, and Keeley areas. We're still waiting on approval from DEP for June, but we expect that next week. The Army Corps has given us an informal green light for Friendly Pond, but we anticipate formal approval by the Army Corps in writing by the end of this week for the Friendly Pond area. We have a pre-construction meeting, virtual, scheduled for May 11th with the contractor and city staff, and construction is anticipated to begin before the end of May for the Friendly Pond area. And then as the other projects get approved formally from the Army Corps, the contractor will start working in each of the different project areas. Some of them will be simultaneous, some might be standalone depending on when we get the permits. But we're almost there. We're pretty much done with the state and we're almost done with the federal, which is the Army Corps.
That's fantastic. It's great to see that come through with the Army Corps. I know that's a tough one. So
It was very difficult. So they'll probably start with Friendly and then work their way to Lloyd. I believe we want Lloyd done second, and then after that, it might be a mix of the other areas.
a lot of residents will be very happy to hear that and see that. Any questions? Anyone? All right, let's move on to item 2, heavy pipe cleaning and contract. Where do we stand on that?
Vanessa?
I can give an update, Chairman.
Thank you, Vanessa, please.
So as part of the contract, we have 6 locations that we are planning to clean. That was West Cedar Street near Scribner, North Taylor, Andrew Fields on County, Hunters Lane, Sherry Drive, and Bonton Street. As of today, we have completed 3 of those locations. West Cedar, I believe that's where we were last time that we were in the meeting. We were finishing that. Then before we did North Taylor near Oak Hills. And since last week, we are on Andrews Field. That one is taking a little bit longer. We had a lot of sediments in that area. So, but it will look really good. We're also doing some work with highway, and we're gonna get that very good in a couple of weeks. After that, we're gonna move to Surrey Drive. Also, as part of this, another thing that we did on Surrey Drive was that we were able to elevate one manhole that we have there. It was covered. So that was on, the address was near number 9 and number 17. So we exposed those. And near number 3, I'm sorry, actually near number 15, we also had a grate that we also had a manhole cover. And then we now have easy access to maintain that. So what we did is we switched the crew to the fields so we could get this work done at Surrey Drive, and I will be able to move them there. So just for the record, Surrey Drive is getting a lot of, we're really putting a lot of effort in that area because we know it's critical. So we have this cleaning happen. We're gonna follow with the sediment removal contract for the pond. And then hopefully, as soon as we give it the flood study status, that's also where we're gonna put the effort. So I just wanna let you know. So we should be at Andrews Field, hopefully for another 1 or 2 weeks. And then we'll move to Surrey. That's where we are.
That's fantastic news. I'm really happy to hear about the Andrews Field cleaning. Hopefully soon we'll be able to get everybody out there again and get the Norwalk Marching Band out there performing and practicing for what will hopefully be a good year coming forward. And that'd be great to have Andrews Field ready for them. Vanessa, just a quick question. With everything going on, I know we've been a little short staffed or half staffing due to the COVID-19. Do you feel like we've been keeping up with schedule for what we had planned?
I would say yes. What happened is that with the construction on site, we have been very lucky. We haven't, just so that the members know, about 2 weeks ago, we have issued a memorandum for all the contractors that are working on our right-of-way to send us a preparedness plans for COVID-19. Pretty much everybody respond back. So we have on file on how is the plan for whoever vendor or contractor is working on our right-of-way, and we haven't heard of anyone getting sick. So what is good news? So with that, we can see that with no much traffic around, most of the work on the right-of-way can be expedited as much as possible, right? So I think that we are really seeing everybody either on schedule or sometimes even ahead of schedule. A good example is First Water District when they're doing the work of replacing the water main on and around 4 Point Street in that area. I think that they are really moving much faster than they thought because they don't have to deal with the traffic on a daily basis as much. So I think that this is kind of really good news. And if even on other projects that we oversee, that is, for instance, the Walk Bridge, it is the same thing. Now that the trains are running in a much different schedule, and we have less trains going in and out, they can have more tracks being closed, and then the contractor can work on. Remember that when I say the Walk Bridge is under the Walk Bridge program, but I'm referring to the Dockyard project that is happening now. So I see a lot of improvements happening throughout the area, and then everything's on schedule. We also start paving. We start milling about 3-4 weeks ago, and we had our first road pave as of today. Awesome. The Columbine Street got completed. Sorry, I'm a little off topic of our discussion, but I just want to, since you asked, I just want to give you guys a little overview of where we are.
Great. Are there any other questions? All right, fantastic. It's great to see, at least with everything going on, we're able to keep up with schedule and keep moving forward. Hopefully, when everything starts getting back on track and goes back to normal, we'll be ready to go and we'll be ahead of the game. Number 3, flood study status. Anthony, is this pretty much a lot of the same that we've already heard, or do you want to go into it, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'll keep it short, yes, but as of today, we began coordinating a meeting with Woodard and Curran, our consultants who are performing the flood study, and they would like to review the proposed final draft of the executive summary and the report content, which will include a more narrowed cost for the capital improvements, and also their recommendations as far as number 1, number 2, number 3. Obviously, the city's gonna have input on what we prefer, right? Because we have to balance the cost with the benefit, but they know our budget. And over the last few weeks, they were able to do more iterations with the stormwater model, and they have a more exact and precise cost. And they've engineered the improvements further to what you'd consider a 30% design. So that's what this flood study is going to generate. They're going to give us a set of recommendations, cost, and at the end of the day, we'll have a 30% design. Just so everyone's aware, Mr. Chairman, as you are aware, we'll have to go into contract again with them to finish the design from 30% to 100%. And I made that, I'd alerted to the committee to begin with that the money that we have allotted for them was only to complete the 2 flood studies, which brings you to about a 30% design. From there, there'll be additional soft costs to advance the design to bidding and then full construction. So we anticipate if everything goes on schedule, we should begin these improvements by next spring, maybe next summer. But again, that depends on the local, state, and federal permitting. But we're not too worried about that. Woodard and Curran's very good and has their every expertise in permitting. So a rough schedule, we anticipate design to progress from July 1 when we get more fiscal allocation for the watercourse maintenance project. Hopefully, if that gets approved through full council, then they'll design over the fall and winter and part of the spring. And hopefully we can implement the final improvements late spring, early summer of 2021 in the Friendly Pond area, of course.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? All right. Item number 4, Norwalk River Valley Trail City-State Lease Agreement. Again, this is just for discussion. So where do we stand on that?
Mr. Chairman, we have Mike Yosak on the line, but just to give you a cursory introduction, and Mike can get into the more specifics. The state does not incorporate, or I guess the summary is that the state doesn't, they're a little bit lax and loose when they lease land to us for the environmental requirements. And with the help of Corporation Counsel and the Law Department, they've been working tremendously to help us on a lot of different efforts. They wanted us to incorporate language into the state's master agreement, the quote unquote lease agreement, where we will be able to perform what's called phase 1 and phase 2 environmental testing. And Ms. Lauricella asked this question earlier, and Mike, I'll let you elaborate further in a minute. But basically the state wasn't at first in favor of us wanting to have the environmental testing done, right? Because we want to know what's under the ground. So when the contractor does work, we're not hit with a major change order or run into issues that could delay construction. So with the help of Corporation Counsel and the Law Department, we were able to negotiate language into the lease agreement that allows us to perform what's called phase 1 testing, which is more of a desktop analysis, and then phase 2 testing, which is more in the ground, taking soil samples, borings, and they figure out what the soil profile looks like and if there's any contaminants below. But Mike, I'll defer to you, but that's basically the overall scope, is that we got the state to include that language that we suggested. And normally they don't include any provisions or language for the municipality that's leasing the land to have additional protection for the environmental testing. So thank you to Mike, and thank you to the Law Department, Mario, Darren, everybody who's worked on it. Mike, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony.
Sure.
Basically, a few months ago at a meeting, you approved the lease agreement with the state for a parking lot off of Riverside Drive, just north of Casatelli Tile. And we didn't have the phase 1 done at that time. We've now completed the phase 1. So we just wanted to give you an update of what they found. Basically came back with low risk. So we really have limited exposure there. And So that's basically where we stand. So we just wanted to inform you of that. And the phase 1 has been completed now. Any questions?
Councilman Serenides, if I may just interject for a second. Corporation Counsel Capola asked me to, myself and Mr. Yozik to put this issue on the agenda. It had obviously already been previously approved. We didn't want to delay the bidding process, but at the same time, we were trying to usher along the phase 1 process. It was anticipated that the phase 1 report would come back prior to those approvals going through the process. That didn't happen as planned. But one of the reasons why we put this back on as an informational item is that the state of Connecticut has a lease that has standard specifications, which they essentially will not alter under any circumstance. As initially drafted, it was my interpretation, along with the interpretation for council for the
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you still there?
Yep.
Those Corporation Counsel calling in right now. I apologize. It had language that was interpreted by myself and by our neighbor to the north, that Wilton, that it actually could potentially be viewed as requiring indemnifying for pre-existing conditions or conditions that existed prior to the commencement of the lease. Obviously, they gave our department quite a bit of pause. We spent quite a bit of time contesting lease language, pursuing this directly through the AG's office, through the Office of Policy Management. It went through political channels up to the governor's office. And at the end of the day, we could not get a change in that language. Ultimately, though, and very interestingly, they revised their specifications unbeknownst. They didn't announce this to us, but they did it in the course of pursuing all this. And the language is now arguably more favorable. It makes it much more difficult to argue that that identification requirement is backward looking or covers pre-existing conditions. One might even argue that this point is ambiguous to even be applied that way. But because we had gone through the approval process and received the phase 1 after the fact, we wanted to come back and make sure that your body was aware of the circumstances, so that if there was any change in course, that we would know what to do.
Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe a question for Mike. Diane Lorcella made reference to a auto body shop, I believe. Did you find any mention of that in the phase 1? Did that come up?
Yes, that was mentioned. That's south of where we're leasing the property. It's down where the tanks were is downstream of this area. So this property is not affected by it.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Mike, will those findings be posted anywhere on the city's website for?
We could post them. They're quite. It's quite a large document. It's 600 or 700 pages.
Wow. Okay. But I guess just for anybody's reference that might have some questions or would like a little light reading, 600 pages, sure. If we could post this somewhere on the city's website, that'd be great.
Well, I'll work on it with IT.
Thank you. Thank you. Or even a link, whatever makes it easier.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to item B, the monthly solid waste report for February and March 2020. To Jessica, Ms. Palladino, are you going to take that one or?
Sure. So we're seeing a general increase in solid waste due to the COVID pandemic. Just to give everyone an overview, there's about somewhere in the range of a 10% increase of curbside garbage. And we're seeing that follow through with the MSW tonnage out from the transfer station as well. Folks are home, they're cleaning out their house, and they're home more generating waste. So we are seeing an uptick in the MSW tonnage.
Okay. Are we seeing any less from businesses? Seeing that?
We don't
Are we
have
seeing an
that.
offset, or-
We don't
Sorry?
have that parsed out because of the way that we get the data from city carding. There's no differentiation of the downtown business district areas that do get garbage collection. So it would be in the total tonnage that you see on a monthly basis from curbside pickup. We don't have access to any private haulers' tonnages.
Okay.
But you're also seeing,
Sorry.
sorry,
I'm sorry.
Chairman. You're also seeing a slight increase in curbside tonnage for recycling as well. So while it's not as large of an increase, it's somewhere in the range of 5%, maybe even up to 10%. You're not seeing that increase. You are seeing that corresponding increase with increased recycling as well.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Ms. Palladino.
Thank you.
Upcoming projects. What do we have that's fun and in the works? Anything? All right, that's good enough.
Yeah, sorry, we'll have just the sediment removal contract. That is the next one that we have our, as Anthony said, we're gonna have our kickoff meeting next week. So that is the next one that we're gonna have people starting on. So we also plan to put a bid out probably in June for more of the concrete sidewalks for this coming year. So that's where we are for now.
And paving will begin in the next few weeks too, Mr. Chairman and Vanessa. I know that we're currently finalizing our paving list. We're still wrapping up some of last year's paving fiscal year, and then we're going to start with this fiscal year paving too. So you will be seeing paving operations in the next few weeks, and they're continuing with curb and sidewalk work. I think right now they're between the 1st and 5th Avenue area and Cove Road. They're in that area, and then they'll go on to the other areas that we have in the contract.
All right, fantastic. Do we have any other comments?
Just a happy birthday to Vanessa.
Happy birthday, Vanessa.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Vanessa.
Thank you.
All right,
We
so
should-
sorry. So the next Public Works Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 2nd. And if that's it, and no one else has any other comments, can I have a motion? All right, Tom, do you have a comment, Mr. Keegan?
Yeah, one comment, George, if I may. On the day we opened the South Smith Street facility yard waste, I happened to take my lunch bag full of leaves down there just to see what was going on. And I was pleasantly surprised by how well the operation went. All of the employees that I encountered, and there were many, were very engaging. They were polite. They were just really, really good people down there. And I just want to say to Anthony and to Jessica, job well done.
Very good point, Mr. Keegan. Thank you very much for bringing that up. It's something that I forgot to mention and overlooked, but it was a big move for the city and it was handled really well. A lot of people were pleasantly surprised at how smooth it ran, even with the tight area and corridor over there. So you guys did a great job. Thank you, everyone that was involved. And
It only took me an hour and 40 minutes to get through the line, but that's okay. I was fine. I had nothing else to do.
All right. Well, do I have a motion then?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Keegan. And thank you, everyone. And have a good night and continue to stay safe.
Good
Have a
night.
good night. Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.